Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today at the Asian Vision Institute, we have a special guest, Dr. Dina Rahaja from Indonesia, to give a presentation, also to share her insight and as well as experience on our very important topic today, the women in elections and social security. So Dr. Dina will share the experience as well as insights about what she has been through her research and publications, as well as through practical experience from Indonesia, from other countries in the region and beyond. So before we start, I would like to read out very long CV of Dr. Dina Rahaja. But please, excuse. I have to excuse myself not to read all of that. Otherwise, we will not have the time, to listen to her insight. So, Dr. Dina earned a Doctor of Philosophy in 2007 and Master of Arts from the Department of Political Science, the Ohio State University in the U.S. With the major in comparative politics and major in international political economy. Her dissertation was about Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore's governing of social security after the Asian financial crisis in 1997. I think everyone still remember about 1997 financial crisis that was rocking the world and with rambling effects going on for a couple of years. Her undergrad degree was in international relations, I think since 1999, when I was very young, and many of us were still, in high school or elementary school. For the completion of her master degree and PhD degree, she earned the comparative quarterly evaluated scholarship from the Ohio State University as a teaching associate. So to get that teaching position is not quite easy, and this is just one of her achievements. We can jointly, celebrate for her academic credentials. Dr. Dina joined Venice University in March 2017. Since then, not only since then, since before that, she has been active in sharing, teaching diplomats, government officials, military officers in Indonesia and beyond on strategic international affairs and public policy. And she has written and publishing widely, I think, on fisheries, on democracy, on women's rights, and she has published one important book about human rights in at risk, and it has been published with Routledge. So if you have opportunity, please take a chance and have a look, but don't forget to buy. Yeah, and I think before further ado, we will have time to interact with Dr. Rahaja. Whether face-to-face or virtually, you have the chance to ask questions. But I will invite Dr. Dina to give a presentation, to give a talk, and followed by questions. So please be ready. If you have questions, please drop questions, or those who join virtually online, please write down the questions and be short and concise. So, Dr. Dina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim Longcheng. Jumrip Su, everybody, thank you very much for having me in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh. It's always a pleasure. It's such an honor to be able to participate, join in AVI session this afternoon. Cambodia has been, very, very, has a special place in my heart, for many years now, almost a decade, or more than a decade, if I should say. It's very important for me to share my thoughts with the younger colleagues. If you can see behind me, I mean in front of me now, younger colleagues from AVI. So excited. So this topic that, did you pick it up? This is, I'm going to be very informal, yeah, because the point of the today's gathering is for sharing, I think. This topic, women in elections and social security, is very important. But I would like to first gather your views. Yeah, usually, why do you think women's issue is important, or how do people usually respond if you say something? Let's talk about women in election or women in social security. What response do you think people will give to you? If I may get response in the context of Cambodia, yes, please.
I'm a senior citizen. I have retired, but I have to work again because I believe retirement benefits that are given by government are not enough. I do not know how it works.
So it's important, right? Social security is important for everyone.
It's very important. I have 2 kids, both of them married. It's now me and my wife. You see, that's why we're here. And as I told you, senior citizen, okay, that social security is really, a parachute for us. And it's really how government will address these people, retired, okay, disabled, and so on.
Right. So it's a safety net, right? It helps you during difficult times in your life. But how would people in general in Cambodia especially respond when you mention women in this kind of issues? In my country, they would respond usually, why do you add women in there? I mean, it's important on its own, but why do you add women in it? As if this doesn't go well as a sentence. How is it in Cambodia? Do you have the same puzzle?
People may see it's a human rights issue.
Human rights issue.
Address more with the women's power and participation in all activities, including election and security. So
Right.
sometimes people really fancy, as you say, Indonesia, why mention women, same here in Cambodia. But for me as a woman, I feel powerful to see it and see it begin with women.
So yes,
Yes, I
Thank you.
have concern about social security to women because some companies that not register to the government, so yes, the women don't get the same or suitable opportunity or
people don't get
benefits from
benefits.
the companies. So it's more risky to women than men because they have no responsibility. Yes, that's how I'm concerned.
So we got two participants saying, as a woman, she feels empowered when she sees this kind of title because women needs to be part of it. And the gentleman is also saying that it's actually important because women usually is left behind from these two. So we need to talk about it. So allow me to give you a context here. All of us here are sitting as scholars, as part of think tank. As a think tank, our job is to think, right? To think together for a better kind of politics. What is politics? The essence of politics is always about power contestation, right? You will see different groups participating, poising desires of having certain kind of policies. So where are we as think tank, as scholars in all of this? All of these contestation is trying to build a common or public good. Just like any policies, basically, we need colors. We need to capture different colors in order to create a policy that you can truly call public or common goods. One thing that people often miss, and as I said, feel awkward in mentioning women in this sentence together, because they see or they fail to see the strength of different groups, different groups, in how they can strengthen the policy. Women, for instance, people often left behind, even though the number is actually quite big in our society. They think of women more of what they don't have, rather than what they have, rather than what they can do. Same thing actually with groups like disability, person with disabilities. We often think that they need this, they need that, they cannot do this, which is why we should help them that. We forgot that they are there because they are strong. They are alive because they are strong. So how can we tap into what they have to strengthen our society? If we think about politics only as a contestation, we forget the essence of human being as social beings, where basically we need an ecosystem. An ecosystem needs to be complete, right? The air, the water, the land, the appreciation, the honor, it's all the things that often unsaid and untold that becomes actually essential for the development of us as human beings. So some call it inclusivity, but sometimes I think for certain groups, when they say inclusivity, it feels like they are required to include somebody, not because they're worth it, but because I have to. Well, it may not be so inspiring, but think about ecosystem of us as community, as policymakers, as policy influencers. What we need is an ecosystem where everybody contributes. So I would like to bring your attention to the importance of women as an existential part of our ecosystem in public policy. So without them, it's not going to be complete. Without groups like person with disabilities or minority groups, it's also going to be incomplete. But women is big in number. So it's such a mistake to look them only from what they don't have, see them from what they have. So that's the starting point of our discussion today. I want us to think about women in their strength. Yeah. So, for instance, let me now go to the point on election. Okay, because we are talking about election. The election is upcoming in Cambodia. So excited. Election in politics means what? Peaceful transition
Exactly.
of power, right? Without election, there could be bloodshed, there could be conflicts in the society. What else is election important for? Representation. Voicing, right?
Voicing, yes.
Because we cannot choose somebody if they don't voice what they think needs to be have in our society, right? And then in terms of policy, for instance, election actually help us to create different ideas, right? You cannot create a policy from one idea.
Exactly.
Never, right?
Never. Yes.
Never, never in any history of any country. Even if the government consists of only one political party, there will always be a pot of ideas
Exactly.
before something is, boiled into one, agreed as a consensus in that country. So election is a means for us to transition, to communicate ideas, to contest ideas, to voice ideas, and don't forget this as well. It's about implementing ideas into action. This is the chance. So if you vote for someone who can actually thank you. If you vote for someone whose idea align with yours, then that's a chance to implement your ideas, right? So how many of us understand that logic? So this is an important message we have to get through to women, to younger generation, to men who love women, right? This idea transcends to them, that it's it's part of, as I said earlier, ecosystem. Without women participating in politics, women participating in building ideas, legitimacy is not as full for that policy. Inclusion, of course, diversity, and for some of you, you mentioned your field is sustainable development, right? Sustainable economy. Can you do it without women? No, you cannot. Because women, even if they're not educated, some of us think that women needs to be educated, right? To participate in politics or in policy. They are workforce. They are backbone of the family. They are inspiration for the family. They are hope for the family. So that means women is the backbone of the country.
Exactly.
So do not underestimate them, even if they are not educated and they cannot speak the way you speak. Our job is to tap on that, give the platform during election times to make sure that their voices are heard. And this is even more relevant during the digital technology era. Women everywhere, even in villages. I visited villages in across Cambodia, right? Even the northest part of Cambodia, like Prefia, women also read news, or I don't know what they communicate with cell phones, right?
Cell phone, yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they sit after they go home from the field. They open their cell phone and do something with it. Maybe they watch YouTube or TikTok or whatever. But that means they are informed. They do have preferences. They do have desires for them, for their family. So it's just about the chance, whether you give them the chance or not. Now, if you can go to slide number 3, for instance, I want you to pick between this. Can we go to that slide?
I think it becomes.
Oh,
static
it becomes
now.
slide. Okay.
Yes.
I want you to answer for me. I gave you a myth and facts, okay, about women. Which one do you think is a myth? Which one do you think is a fact? Okay. First, women is soft and kind. Myth or fact?
I think it's a fact. Yeah. Maybe I win this time. No, we win. Yes.
What do you think, lady?
I think it's a myth.
I think it's a myth. And it's a myth. Me? Kind and soft. We can be kind and soft if needed, but we can also be strong and brave and really, can be very conflictual as well when we need it in arguments. So women don't read it just by the cover. So
in Cambodia, we have a popular saying that all women become tiger after they get married.
all women become tiger after marriage in Cambodia, they say. Because they have vision for family, for the children, for themselves. That's voice. That's desire. That's what you call aspiration in politics. So it doesn't mean that it's not important. We need to know what they're heading to. Second, yeah. Women speaks. Myth or facts? Speaks.
Speaking.
Yeah, women speak.
It's both. It depends on call it well, country's norm, right? If you talk about Afghanistan women can speak.
Ah,
If you talk with Philippine women,
They can
speak
speak.
a lot. So I would say it's both.
okay. Apparently, what do you call it? There are a lot of, I feel there's a barrier as well here when we talk, because you start putting women in different categories. Women here can speak, there they cannot speak. Women in essence always speak. I mean, even if you're married to, someone who is not educated, and you still want them to speak, right? To you at least.
But not in that context.
Not in that
Election.
context. Election?
Yeah.
Election is about programs. Election is about what do you want to have for your family? Do you want this kind of job to last, or you want to change your job? It's about issues in election too.
Or you want better for better society.
Better society, or you want to send your child to that school or to other school.
But
It's
I would believe it's more of making formal decision. It's a decision-making process where women either can speak or not.
in essence, women will speak. Whether they are allowed by the society or not is another thing. But the fact is, women speaks. It's just they're not heard, or they are forbidden to work. To be heard. But they speak. Other issues that I would say is a fact is that women is key to eliminating poverty. That's part of the study I've done. In numerous places around the world, you do better eliminating poverty if you engage the women. Why? Because women takes care of finance in the family. Even if you don't have any resources, they have to spend, use it.
Allocate
Allocate.
that little scarce
That's,
resources.
even if it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
And think about how you survive.
I tend to agree with this one because there have been scientific studies, at in a more other disciplines rather than only we talk about politics or governance or democracy. We talk about, you're right, you talk about poverty reductions. Women are very much better at managing and not only allocating the money but also the food.
Right.
So it also involved with the sphere of food security
Right.
within household level or within the society. But maybe I'd like to bring attention to the questions on whether different degree of women's participation in politics may bring different result for the country in terms of poverty reduction or alleviation at the commune level or whether at the national level.
So with these examples that I give, basically you can sense that women is expected in their family, in their society, to have solutions for micro things in life, right? And even if they're not educated, even if they have low income, they have to think about solution. Now, if we don't give them, if we're talking about high politics, we already think about how do we accumulate all of this information, right? About women from every different places. We are jumping the logic. Before women can participate before women can actually voice, they need to be understood and to be given the chance to be acknowledged that their ideas matter. And again, it's not about, don't think about politics as an election as only about big thing like unity of the country. Unity of a country starts with little things like whether people can have the chance to improve the education for the children, whether they can have enough food on the table, whether the family can provide nutritious food for the children. Some families in parts of Indonesia, for instance, fail to provide nutritious food because the ladies, they are not educated about pregnancy, they are not educated about which food from their surroundings can actually be processed into quality food for their children. I mean, all of this requires knowledge. One thing that think tank can help facilitate. If you let that knowledge grow from them and from within, it's jumping the logic. It's like just pushing them to let's participate in election, but you don't think about their situation. So people or any groups that used to be left behind needs to be empowered first.
Exactly.
Need to be empowered. You even reduce lower into acknowledge first. You give them acknowledgement. What you do is important, lady. What you do, you already actually have ideas on how to solve this and that. Your job as think tankers, as scholars, is to identify their strength. They are strong in microfinancing with limited resources. They are strong in processing cassava into what?
The food products.
Food products, for instance.
Agro-industrial products.
Agro-industrial products. And then you improve from that. So election campaigns, election programs cannot be something falling from heaven. It needs to be grounded on what people know, what they experience every day in their lives. And that you can learn best from women, I would say. The men, yes, of course, but we've heard the voices of men already. Let's try to tap more on the women. Some parts of Cambodia, for instance, and also parts of Indonesia, we also experience or we witness the happenings of gender discrimination and violence, right? Women get beaten by husbands or something, violence at home. Who can solve that problem? That's a national problem. That's an election issue. Who can solve it if you don't know why women are in that situation? Why they keep falling in that situation? Why only certain area in Cambodia has that experience, not in other parts? That's a question mark for think tank, not for the ladies, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot push the lady, say, okay, you don't know how to do this, then you don't participate. It's our job to think and compare based on asking them questions, surveying, focus group discussion, tap into that knowledge so this can be formulated, can be brought by the politician to villages.
Exactly. Politicians or those in leadership positions, those in governance, and I do agree. But from your experience, how difficult or how easy it is to empower women to engage in politics or in elections? I mean, maybe from experience of Indonesia.
One thing that improves Indonesia's experience about women, number one is you have to show that there are best cases of women who can actually voice, who can speak, who can think, who can solve problems not only for their family but beyond. Best cases of women like that bring to the top. Ask them to, and it's natural. All women are usually natural activists. Once they are brought into the fora of public, they would aspire other women and attract more women to come. I have the same story, I have the same story, and then they create groups, they create movements. Indonesian groups of ladies, doing movements like that are plenty, not only at the national level, but also at regional levels, even sectoral levels, doing empowerment for fishery sector, empowerment for agricultural sector, plantation sector. It's impressive how several examples of ladies on the top inspire women to go to the ground and even study legal, and become paralegal. Just helping women experiencing domestic violence, for instance, to go strong, get relief from other women. I mean, it's impressive. So, number one, you put the women up, and then second, you build. Naturally, they will build groups of support, and then the social discourse will change.
Gradually
In
in a more positive way.
More positive way. There will be debates, and in my own experience back in the 90s, when we talk about women, most of the time people always ask, why do you ask for gender equality? Aren't you equal already? Right?
Yeah, we still have heard the same questions these days. Sometimes people just joke about that, or people just ask questions.
Yeah.
Just the question that you just raised a moment ago.
Yeah. Or even if they see me coming to a room, they will whistle. And that's already underestimating a woman, right? Because you don't whistle if a man comes in and speak, but they do. But it's part of the discourse. It's part of the struggle. So for us, all of us, all activists, women activists in Indonesia have experienced the same thing. And we don't take that personally. We take that as part of the discourse. We need to stand up and just keep doing it until they realize that we do have something good for the society. It's not easy. So you need resilience, yeah?
Resilience. Yes.
Resilience. The woman itself needs to be, you need support groups, basically.
So which means they have to support themselves.
Yes.
They need to help themselves.
Yes.
In addition to the support they have received from men or the general public.
And it's interesting, because maybe the current generation not supportive enough, but once the children of this woman who are empowered see and grow up how the mother is respected and can still work while also taking care of the family and stuff, the children becomes even if it's men, male children, they become sympathizers of women's rights. It's happening in Indonesia. You start seeing everywhere male who support doing work at home, taking care of babies and stuff. So cultural stereotyping, it's hard, it's very tough to beat, but it's not impossible to beat. I see raise of hand, yeah.
I'm just curious, have you ever observed or done the research with regard to the difference between women in rural and the evolving roles of women in urban areas and in rural areas? Because there may be role for education to play or economic status and others cultural factor that may contribute into that as well.
Yes. So, Indonesia comprised of islands. Different islands are inhabited by hundreds sometimes of ethnic groups. So if we zoom in closer to different districts in Indonesia, each of them may have different stories and characteristics of problems. I can even differentiate not just rural and urban, but coastal women in coastal areas and women who are in as farmers. They have different stories. They have their different fights. Coastal women have tougher experience because not only the husbands needs to be away most of the time. They live on debt most of the time. So they are low income, but they have no lands. They have no. They have nothing to rely their family on. Different with the farmers. At least the farmers, they still have something that can work on during. They own something, and then in between waiting for harvest, they work in markets, like women in Yogyakarta, for instance. If you've been to Yogyakarta, you see during certain seasons, you see lots of how do you call that? We call it in Indonesia kuli gendong. So ladies helping other ladies in markets, carrying things, and expect to get paid, as you know.
Like a porter.
Like a porter, yes, woman porter. All of these ladies support each other basically. So what's interesting is that these groups, these movements, start from the national level. Some of the ladies that you see in the Indonesian delegation, for instance, for the election mission in Cambodia 2 days from now, they witnessed how once they become part of the privilege who can get public attention, they start movements in their areas, and then the ladies in that area help other ladies in the more rural areas. So the initiatives, one thing that probably also helped is the ease of opening up civil society groups or NGOs. It helps. Either it's foundation or non-profit groups or cooperatives. If it's you make that easier for women to open, the massive the movement will be. Women help other women. That's the principle. So usually coastal women, like the movement for coastal women in Indonesia, it's also by other coastal women. But this coastal woman used to participate in an activity in the province or at the national level. They get invited and then they come back, they create groups. So that's how it is.
Do you call that kind of women empowerment, but by themselves?
I still call it women empowerment. Because along the way, they also, this is what's interesting in Indonesia, they also drag men into it.
Exactly. So this is not a men empowerment.
Men empowerment?
Yeah, no, just kidding, Because first we empower women, and later on, not only they empower themselves, but they also empower others in the community.
Others in the community.
Yeah, I believe that. I still can't see that women alone can solve this gender inequality. It's difficult. You will not get men to support that particular activity. Because you see, there are lots of issues that has to be brought to the authorities. Right? Like sexual harassment.
Yes.
Right? Racism. These are difficult issues on gender equality. And it will be really difficult. I'm not saying women can do it alone, but 1 + 1 is, I would say, better in bringing these issues to the government. Because it all boils down to, for government policies to address this gender inequality, right? So, for example, access to healthcare. This is a big issue for women, right? But can you solve it alone without the government, making tough policies, strict policies towards regulation on healthcare? See, and that boils down again to that social security issues.
Yes. So imagine if you are just entering politics and talk in public seminars, and please tell us your experience, and then they tell stories, and then there are questions like yours. they may shut the spirit down, right? Like, okay, I'm not sufficient. I don't have the answer to that, and then gone. This is the kind of empowerment you need to provide. Safe room for women to start learning how you answer questions like that.
Like create an enabling environment to nurture
them. They need to be confident. They need to be confident on how to negotiate their issue, how to voice their issues.
They have to be represented at the policy level. I think that's what I can see.
Yeah, but not necessarily by men.
No, women.
By women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where most inequality are in making all of this policy, because women are not represented. So that goes back to election. You should be there. You should be elected.
Yeah. That part, yes. But there are some statistics arguing that let's have lots of women politicians in the parliament. Does it change the quality of policy? Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
It's a good thesis.
Yeah. Why? Why is it not necessarily? Because if you don't build enabling environment for more women to participate, then it's only the elite becoming, getting powers, and new people keep coming, but the situation on the ground remains the same. So Indonesia, Philippines, we experienced the tough process of trying to make our voices heard. It's not easy, not easy at all. But I think step by step, if from making forums like this, inviting people from villages, let them talk to each other, share stories. It's very empowering, Talk about daily activities and see from their strength. Once again, I highlight that part, strength, because if you ask at what they don't have, they will reduce their confidence. But ask them about, what have you tried? What have you built? What have you think as a solution to this? They would talk automatically.
Okay.
Now about Social Security, because Fredo already asked about Social Security. Social Security is not an easy thing to build. It requires decades of commitment just for the setting up. Let me take the example of Indonesia. The moment I decided to study about Social Security, people still deny that Indonesia needs Social Security. Because the first mindset among people in developing country is to rely on savings, personal savings.
You mean government, not really the people?
No, personal.
Yeah, well, the people still also think the same at that time. Even the laborers, they think, why not? Why do we have to give our portion of the money to right?
That's what you mean.
To the government, and then let's keep it to ourselves, and then we can finance our own. So they think they can solve the risk of life alone. The essence of Social Security, I have to explain to everyone here. Social Security is about making sure that through the risk of life, such as being sick, getting work accidents, death,
Yes.
and even you have children, like maternity, you are not facing those alone. The risk will be shared. What does it mean the risk will be shared? We are human beings. We are not pencils. We are not tables that if we cannot work for one day and then you're out. We human beings needs to be treated humanly, which means that even if we're sick, we still deserve to get paid for the sick leave, right? Or if we are pregnant, you cannot fire us during pregnancy. And you deserve to be rehired as well after you have given birth. So these are the things that internationally are recognized, that women, I mean, not just women, but every human being basically needs to be treated humanly, thus labor rights. So, Social Security makes sure that all individuals will receive the same rights of getting pension. During old age, they also have enough savings. When they're sick, they don't need to suffer losing out all their accounts, saving accounts, things like that. And you cannot solve this problem alone. I can give you some examples of countries who decided that their national social security system is based on individual capacity. Do I need to mention the country? The issue is, if you rely on savings managed by the government, the challenge is for those who don't have income or regular income. It's just requiring them to save, but at the very small amount, uncertain amount every month. Plus, when they are sick, that means the amount of money they can tap out will remains not enough. So different countries will require different models of social security. So how do you decide all of this? Through election, through discourse about social security, through research about social security. Countries like Cambodia, maybe you are better off doing tax-based social insurance. Right? You have the Health Equity Fund, for instance. That shows how important it is for the government to pool the funding from tax and then distribute. Social Security is always oscillating between accumulation and distribution. Accumulation of resources from the better off parts of the society and then distributing it back to the groups who needs. So if you have a bigger population that are left behind and less well off, that means you're better off having pull things in tax. But in big countries like Indonesia, for instance, you can think about pulling out from monthly income as tax, for instance. I mean, these are the kind of discourses that if women don't participate, then you don't see how the reality of, for instance, the benefit, what kind of benefit would help women. Some countries, they exclude certain health benefits such as cancer, ovarian cancer, or certain medicine for women. And it can be very devastating for women. And women, women has a tendency to hide their illness, right? Because I don't want to spend my family saving, or I don't want to leave the house because my kids are little. So they tend to come late for treatment.
That at extra cost, at a later stage.
At the later stage. So if women are not educated to be empowered to participate in social security, that you need early detection, that you need to come to the hospital for free, it's not for payment, just free for checking, they don't come. And the burden will be at the state, right? Lots of cancer, lots of heart disease. These are the kinds of problems women have. So that's an example of why women's participation in social security becomes important. So any kinds of social security basically talks about the vulnerable, and the vulnerable often don't talk. We don't know how they feel. Women also may have multiple comorbidities, multiple illness. Women never retire. They tend to work all the time. So long as their children is still needing money, they would continue to work. So, but they are prone to be fired from their companies, right? So if they don't, a lot of, I've met and saw the struggle of women in the labor unions, for instance. Some of our, we're still trying to make her one of the national hero in Indonesia. She was a labor who fights for women's rights, and she was killed.
Oh.
She was killed really badly, harassed sexually. Very, very sad. But she was the first voice. So when we saw something like that, number one, okay, it's sad, but it gives strength to other women and also the society that, you know, it's a strength. We have to fight for it. It's worth fighting for. So maybe I'll stop there. If you have any questions, anything more particular you would like to explore, I'll be happy.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your very interesting, insightful, experience, contribution to this kind of discourse for women empowerment in politics and social security. And in Cambodia, if we look at a little bit women participation in politics, it has grown quite remarkably. For instance, from 2007, women in civil, we call it in the public sector, civil service sector, it was only 32%. But by 2017, that rose to about 42%. This, I think, it has been well recognized. And in addition to that, the Ministry of Women's Affairs has been trying to promote, women empowerment quite a lot. And now the ministry, the government is implementing, we call it Neri Ratana, phase 4. Kind of Ratana, like a women, like a diamond, like a gem. Because, historically, in a Cambodian society, we value women since the 1st century AD.
Right.
Yeah. So in this regard, Dr. Ching Vandrat, the president of AVI, has his question. His question is how to empower women in politics, particularly in elections, whether they run in the election or they go to voting, as well as how to empower them in politics through budgeting policy. Maybe we can take the experience from Indonesia or elsewhere.
Okay.
Yes.
Number one, about running for office. Running for office is tough. It's double tough for women. Not only because during the campaign season, you have to run 24/7, getting ready for, spreading the messages, door-to-door campaigns. What about your husband? What about your children, right? This is a serious question because you cannot expect the same thing that men do, like meeting at 2 o'clock in the morning until 4, can be done by women. Women around the world have to build a network of other women in politics. Okay, so women in politics, if you're interested to run for office, don't get discouraged by all of this. The experience in other countries is that you build a coalition of other women. In the US, they have Emily's Fund, for instance. So financing, pool of financing, you put a coordinator to fundraise there, so that activities like door-to-door, you can hire volunteers, you can hire the younger people to help doing that. And so you don't have to spend long hours doing all sorts of things alone. And how can you adjust your time? Well, talk to other women politicians. I cannot talk about it because not all the details I can share. I've never run for office, but sharing of experiences from other women, how they beat debates, for instance, with male candidates or with other women candidates. You shouldn't think that women to women can be very friendly too. Sometimes it can be very fiery, but the essence is, as I said, woman is not, you cannot see women only as soft and kind, If it's about competition, women can be very competitive. But it's politics. So again, a network of women needs to be established. And some of the ladies that, again, I mentioned in Indonesian delegation, they participated forming a women caucus in the parliament. So even when you already get your seat in the parliament, you still need to work with other women to push for certain agenda. And they don't work alone. They build caucus basically to talk about it among women, but then they go out and approach men, approach groups. They go to different regions, different parties, talk about it, talk about the cause, and then they come back to the caucus. And like the example in Indonesia is one of it is the issue of social security. This issue was stalled for years before it can almost 2004 until 2011. So that's quite a long time. It was
Almost
stalled.
7 years.
Yeah, and the motor was a woman to put this back. Why? Because she got supports from labor groups, and these labor groups are not just women; they also male activists. But see, the labor unions don't see her as a woman, but see her as a door. So it's already the next level of politics, right? You don't see her gender anymore or a sex anymore, but you already see the capacity, how it's important to involve this woman. Budgeting, for instance, budgeting requires analysis. And this, well, I would encourage people in Cambodia to also, spot talents. Spot talents in universities, from School of Economics, School of Public Policy. Find women there. Engage them in talks like this. Ask them about tough questions about what do you think about the budgeting in this policy. Start from there.
Okay.
When they are comfortable, they build their rapport on studying, reading more about it, doing comparative between cases, between countries. Automatically, they will become expert in there. So some of the Indonesian monitoring groups of budgeting includes women.
Include women.
Some of them choose not to speak, but they calculate. They calculate and they let the men talk. I think it is their choice, but women still participate there. So finance, budgeting, election, I think I answer all of that, yeah?
I do agree, and I think a lot of important information and insight in that one. And I think we can learn that, we have to build an ecosystem that support women, so women can participate and make the process, whether it is public affairs, whether it is about household affairs, include women in all of those programs and activities. But I think before that, maybe we have one questions from the audience. If you have any questions, yes, please. Just one more, short and concise.
As you mentioned before, you mentioned that women tend to contribute more in reducing poverty in the country. However, when we look at international relations side, there are one factor, which is the institution, government institution and agency affect to state behavior. So do you think by having more women in power or in higher ranking government may somehow promote peace and prosperity in the national system?
No. So it doesn't boil to that. It's two different things. Why? Because women is just like any other human beings. Once they know power, once they have taste privilege, they may behave differently to others as well. So our issue here is not that. Our issue is to make sure that more ideas come from the bottom, and you can spot the needs of people who are left behind. For issues like how do you control people in power, it's a different thing. I'd say that's why I say in the beginning, soft and kind is that the style of women, and then the women always participate in issues like low politics. No. Some women, they are passionate about war. They want to go to war. They want to revenge, I don't know, for what they didn't have maybe in the past. Some do change like that. But don't get discouraged by all of that, because by having that kind of figure, that also shows that the discourse change. It's very dynamic. We in our society should not be afraid about discourse, about challenging differences in opinions. Men or women, it will be very strong if it was a woman confronting that question to that woman who. So it becomes very powerful, right? So, but you need that woman in the audience ask that questions to that woman, so that woman remember, why are you in power? How did you come into power, right? But as I said, it's two different things between empowering women, making sure they become parts of the policy, and controlling power, making sure you monitor, making sure you ensure policy is for everybody.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Dina, has a lot of experience on the ground, and in fact, she has been participating in all of these women empowerment process, and got the first-hand experience herself. I think she was appointed as chair of healthcare and employment working group of a team called a transition team of President Joko Widodo, Vice President Joseph Kala from August to October 2014, Indonesia's representative to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights from 2016 to 2018, member of selection panel for the Indonesian Council of National Social Security, DJSN, with appointment from President Joko Widodo, April to October 2019. And she has been with the board member of the AVI. And these are examples of how engaging she has been in a policy level, and also in a level that have impacted many lives, including lives of women and people in Indonesia and across the region. So I think with that conclusion, and also with the insight that she has shared with us today, I would like to call maybe for one more or two more sessions like this sometime in the future. But we have to conclude that women's participation in social, cultural, political, economic lives and activities are very important, as I alluded to her inside her points. And please join me and congratulate and also to appreciate her insights and her valuable time that she has spent more than an hour with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.